It's a little after 2 in the morning. Nothing is wrong. You're not sick, the bed is warm, the house is quiet, and you are completely, helplessly awake. Because somewhere behind your eyes, a voice is replaying 1 second from a party you left 6 hours ago. The second where you lifted your hand to wave goodbye, and the other person had already turned away. Your hand just hung there in the air. And now, in the dark, it keeps hanging there, again and again, with commentary running underneath it. Everyone saw that. You always do this. What is wrong with you? You didn't choose to think about it. You didn't sit up and decide, tonight I'll relive the most graceless half-second of my whole week, on a loop until the birds start. The thought arrived on its own, uninvited, and you climbed inside it like it was a verdict handed down by a judge, instead of what it actually was, a sentence, spoken in a voice. If you know that voice, the 2 a.m. narrator, the one that drafts the email and then drafts your humiliation, the one that has opinions about how you waved at a party, then you already know the particular exhaustion I'm talking about. Not tired in the body, tired in the head. A little ashamed of how loud it is in there, and quietly, almost desperately, wishing for 30 seconds of quiet inside your own skull. So I want to make you a promise, and I want you to hold me to it. By the time we're done here, you're going to be able to do something that sounds impossible from where you're sitting right now. You're going to be able to hear that voice, the critic, the replayer, the one that never stops talking, and know, all the way down to the floor of you, that it is not you. Not as a comforting phrase you repeat, as something you can actually catch yourself doing. And the proof is going to be simpler than you'd ever guess. In fact, it's already true, right now, in this exact moment. You just haven't looked directly at it yet. So look. Notice that you can hear the voice. Right now, there's a narration running. Maybe it's wondering where this is going. Maybe it's half agreeing with me. Maybe it just said, get to the point. Whatever it's saying, you can hear it. And here is the part that quietly changes everything. Whatever can be heard cannot be the one who is doing the listening. The voice is a sound. You are the one it reaches. For your entire life you have been the listener, mistaking yourself for the sound. Sit with that for a second, because we move past it too fast. From the time you were small, that voice has narrated everything. It told you what the day would hold, and how the conversation went, and what people probably think of you. And every single line it spoke, you received twice. Once as true, and once as me. As if the narration weren't describing you, but were you. The two got fused so early and so completely that you never thought to pull them apart. The fish doesn't notice the water. You don't notice the voice, because you've never once stood outside it. And that is the very first move. Not silencing the voice, not arguing with it, just noticing in real time that it's happening at all. Catching yourself mid-sentence and thinking, oh, I'm narrating again. That sounds like nothing. It is not nothing. The moment you notice you're thinking, you have already stepped 1 inch outside the thought. And that inch, that tiny gap between you and the words, is the entire doorway. Everything else we're going to talk about is just learning to walk through it. Now, you might be thinking, fine, but they're still my thoughts. I'm still the one producing them. So let's test that right now with a small experiment. For the next 10 seconds, I want you to not have a single thought. None. Hold a perfectly blank mind, starting now. How did that go? If you're like every human who has ever tried it, thoughts came pouring in. Thoughts about not having thoughts, about whether 10 seconds was up yet, about whether you were doing it right, about this being a strange thing to be asked to do. You couldn't shut the factory down for 10 seconds. You couldn't even slow it. And that tells you something important about who you are. Because here's the thing. If you can't stop the factory, you are not the factory. You're standing outside it, watching the conveyor belt run, unable to find the off switch, because the switch was never in your hand. The brain produces thoughts the way the heart produces beats, automatically, constantly, whether you asked or not. Researchers have a name for the part of the mind that does this when you're not busy with anything. They call it the default mode network, and it spins up the instant your attention isn't pinned to a task. The second you stop concentrating, it starts telling stories about the past, about the future, about what so-and-so meant by that look. Your mind is less an author sitting thoughtfully at a desk, choosing each word, and more a sports commentator who physically cannot stop talking, narrating the boring parts, narrating the night, narrating right over the top of you, begging for silence. Now follow that to where it leads, because it's a doorway too. If most of your thoughts arrive on their own, unbidden, drafted by a process you can't switch off, then a thought showing up in your head is not something you did. It's not a confession. It's not a moral act. The dark thought, the petty thought, the anxious thought, the one that makes you wonder what kind of person you secretly are. It arrived the same way a song gets stuck in your head. You didn't write it. You didn't choose it. It just played. So you can set down the second weight you've been carrying, the heavier one, the shame. You are not guilty of your thoughts. You're responsible only for what you do with them once they land. A thought appearing is the weather. What you do next is the only part that was ever yours. So if you're not the factory, and you're not the voice, and you're not even the author of the words, then who exactly are you? Here's where it gets interesting. Picture the night sky, wide, dark, open. And picture your thoughts as the weather that moves across it. Some nights are clear and still. Some nights the wind picks up. And some nights there are storms so violent, it feels like the sky itself is being ripped apart at the seams. But notice, really notice, the storm is never the sky. The storm is something happening inside the sky. The lightning, the thunder, the wall of black cloud, they rage and crack, and then, every single time, they pass. And when they've passed, the sky is exactly as it was, untouched. It was never in danger. It was only ever the space the storm was happening in. You are the sky. Your thoughts are the weather. And you can prove it to yourself in about 3 seconds. Right now, bring up an irritated thought, something that annoyed you today. Feel it. Now let it go and bring up a calmer one, something you're looking forward to. Feel that. Now here's the question that matters. Who noticed both? Who watched the irritated thought walk in and then watched the calm one take its place? It wasn't the irritated thought. That one left. It wasn't the calm one. That one came later. There's a third thing here, a quiet, watching presence that saw both come and go without itself coming or going. People who've spent their life studying this give it a plain old name, the witness, the one who watches. And the witness has been there the whole time, through every thought you've ever had, as a child, as a teenager, through your worst night and your best morning. That steady awareness was sitting behind your eyes, watching each thought walk in and walk back out, never once getting up and leaving. The thoughts changed constantly. The watcher never changed at all. That unchanging vantage point, that's the part of you that was never broken, never humiliated, never failing, no matter what the voice insisted at 2 in the morning. So the next time a thought has you by the throat, you have one move, and it's a quiet one. You don't fight, you just ask, who is aware of this thought? And in the space it takes to ask that question, you'll feel yourself slide backward, out of the storm, into the sky it's only passing through. Now, the voice is going to object to all of this. It's probably objecting already, because the voice has one trick that keeps it in power. And the trick is this. It dresses up its opinions as facts. Imagine you're standing outside a room, about to walk in for an interview that actually matters, and the voice leans in close and says, calm and certain, they're going to see right through you. You don't belong in this room. And it lands like information, like a weather report from someone who's been inside and knows. But stop and look at this particular forecaster's track record, because it's worth examining. This is the same inner voice that promised you the first date would be a disaster, and the presentation would humiliate you, and the phone call would end in tears. How often was it right? Genuinely, how often did the catastrophe it was so sure about actually arrive in the shape it predicted? If a weather app on your phone got it wrong that consistently, you'd have deleted it years ago and never thought about it again. You'd laugh at anyone who still trusted it. And yet when the voice says you'll fail, you treat it as breaking news. You don't even check it. You just believe it, instantly and completely, because it spoke with confidence and it spoke in your own accent. But a thought is not a report on reality. A thought is a mental event, an offer the mind makes, a guess delivered with total conviction and very often no evidence at all. The confidence is not proof. The loudness is not proof. So when a thought hits you hard, you run one question over it, and it's a small one. Is this true, or is it just loud? Most of the thoughts that flatten you turn out, on inspection, to be merely loud. But here's the trap, and almost everyone falls into it. Once you realize a thought is just noise, the obvious next step seems to be, get rid of it, push it away, fight it down, win. So let's try that too, because there's a famous little experiment for exactly this, and you can run it on yourself right now. Here's the instruction. Do not, under any circumstances, think about a white bear. Don't picture its thick white fur. Don't picture the black nose, the small dark eyes, the heavy way it walks. Whatever you do, no white bear. It's standing right in the middle of your mind, isn't it? The psychologist Daniel Wegner built a whole study around this in the 1980s. He asked people to not think about a white bear, and then to ring a bell every time they did. The bell rang constantly. And worse, when he let them stop suppressing, the bear came back even harder, flooding their minds far more than if they'd never been told to push it away. He called it the rebound effect. The act of shoving a thought down is itself a way of holding it. To not think about something, the mind has to keep checking whether it's thinking about it, which means keeping it permanently in view. The fight is the fuel. Think of it like a tug of war. There's a monster on the other end of the rope, and between you and it, there's a deep, dark pit. The harder you pull to win, the harder the monster digs in and pulls back, and the closer your feet slide toward the edge. As long as you're holding the rope, you're losing, and you're trapped because winning feels like it requires pulling harder. But there's a move that isn't pulling harder. There's a move that ends the whole war. Drop the rope. The monster doesn't vanish. It's still over there. But the contest is over, and your hands are suddenly completely free. That's the shift. You stop trying to wrestle the anxious thought to the ground because you finally understand that the wrestling is what keeps it strong. You let it stand there in the room, unargued with, while you turn and keep walking toward what actually matters to you. The thought can stay. You just stop giving it your hands. And once you've stopped fighting a thought, there's something gentle you can do instead. Something that sounds far too simple to work, but the brain backs it up. You name it. A team of neuroscientists at UCLA, led by Matthew Lieberman, put people in a scanner and showed them images that stirred up fear and anger. When the people just felt the emotion, the brain's alarm center, the amygdala, lit up and stayed lit. But when they put the feeling into plain words, this is fear, this is anger, something quieted. The alarm turned down. The simple act of labeling the intruder seemed to strip it of some of its menace. They called it affect labeling. Naming the feeling loosened its grip. It works the way a bully on a schoolyard loses half his power the second a teacher walks over and says his name out loud. He was only frightening while he was anonymous and looming, a shape with no edges. Name him, and he shrinks back down to a kid. So you do the same thing to the thought. Instead of letting "I'm such a failure" run straight through you as the truth, you say, out loud or just inside, "I notice my mind is offering me the failure story again." Same words, completely different relationship to them. The first version swallows you whole. You're inside it. You are it. The second version sets it on the table in front of you where you can actually look at it. A worry is visiting. The critic is talking again. There it goes. You give the thought a name, and in the naming, you stop being the thought and start being the one watching it arrive. And this is the whole game, really, because once you can watch a thought instead of being it, you discover something that was hidden the entire time you were fused to the voice. You discover the gap. Here's the gap. Think about the text you almost sent, the furious one, perfectly worded, every line a small blade, thumb hovering over send, your whole body screaming that they deserve to read every word of it. And then, for some reason,
a half-second of space opened up. You set the phone down, you went to bed, and by morning, you were so grateful no one ever saw it. What happened in that half-second? The fury didn't go anywhere. The thought, "Send it," was as loud as ever. But something stepped into the space between the urge and the action, and it chose differently than the urge wanted. That space is always there. Think of the runner at mile 20, whose mind is shrieking with total conviction, "Stop, you can't, this is pointless, just stop," and who takes one more step anyway. Not because the thought got quieter, it didn't, it kept screaming the whole way, but because somewhere along the line, they learned that the loudest thought doesn't automatically get to drive.
Between every thought and every action you take, there is a gap. It can be a half-second wide, and that narrow strip of space is where every bit of your freedom lives. The urge and the action were never the same thing. They only feel welded together because no one ever told you that you were allowed to stand in between them. So that becomes the practice. You let your thoughts have a vote. You never let them have a veto. When the pull is strongest, to send the text, to say the cruel thing, to quit the hard thing, to go back to the thing that hurts you, you find that half-second of space, and inside it you ask a different question. Not, "What do I feel like doing right now?" because the thought already has a loud answer to that. You ask, "Who do I want to be right now?" And then you let that answer, the quieter one, take the wheel. Now I have to be honest with you about something, because if I let you believe this is a single insight you grab once and keep forever, I'll have set you up to fail. It isn't. You don't read this or hear this and then arrive, permanently free, never hijacked again. That's not how any of it works. Think of it more like having a restless puppy. You set the puppy down and tell it to stay, and it stays for about 4 seconds before it bolts off across the yard. So you walk over, gently pick it up, and bring it back, and it bolts again. And you bring it back again. You are not failing at this. Bringing the puppy back is the whole training. That patient, unbothered 100th return is the thing that, over weeks, teaches it to stay. This is exactly why so many people try meditation for a week and quit, convinced they're hopeless at it. They sit down believing the goal is a blank, silent mind, and theirs throws up a grocery list, an old argument, an itch, a worry, so they decide they're simply bad at this and walk away. But that's like deciding you're bad at the gym because the weight feels heavy. The heaviness is the point. The weight is supposed to resist you. And the wandering mind is supposed to wander because the wandering is the exercise. Every single time your attention drifts off and you notice it's gone and you walk it gently back, that is one repetition. One curl for the muscle of your own attention. When your mind wanders 100 times in 10 minutes, you didn't fail 100 times. You got 100 reps. People quit right at the moment the actual training begins. And here's what those reps slowly build, though no one warns you it'll be this quiet. The gap between the trigger and your response gets a little wider. The recovery gets faster. A spiral that used to swallow 3 days of your life starts letting go after 3 hours, and then, eventually, after 3 minutes. And then one ordinary afternoon, nothing special about it, a brutal thought floats up, the kind that used to ruin your whole evening. And you watch it come, and you almost smile, and you let it drift on past without flinching. Not because you defeated it, because you finally have somewhere to stand while it passes. That's the freedom. It doesn't arrive as a thunderclap. It accumulates, one unremarkable rep at a time, until one day you notice it's there. So stop measuring your progress by how quiet your mind gets. That's the wrong ruler, and it'll tell you you're failing forever. Measure it instead by how fast you come back, by how quickly you recover when the noise gets loud, because it will get loud again, and that's not a sign anything's broken. Which brings me back to the promise I made you at the start, in the dark, at 2 in the morning. I told you that by the end, you'd be able to hear the voice and know it isn't you, and that the proof would be simpler than you'd guess. So here it is, one more time, now that you felt it. You can hear the voice. And the one who hears it cannot be the voice. You are not the anxious narration. You are not the critic drafting your failures. You are not the storm. You are the still, wide watching space the storm is moving through. And the storm has never once touched it, no matter how black the cloud got. Here's the part that should let something in your chest unclench. You are probably never going to fully silence the voice in your head. And you don't need to. That was never the deal. The weather will keep rolling across the sky, clear nights and wild ones, for the rest of your life. The only thing that's changed, the thing that changes everything, is that now you know which one you are. You don't have to win the argument. You don't have to suppress the thought, or wait around for the noise to finally stop. You just stop handing it the steering wheel. That's not control through force. Force was the tug of war, and you already know how that ends. This is freedom through distance. One quiet inch of space between you and the words. So tonight, when the voice starts up again, and it will, see if you can do just one small thing. Don't fight it. Don't believe it. Just notice it and think, there it goes again. And feel yourself, in that noticing, step 1 inch back into the sky. If sitting with this gave you even a little more room to breathe, a little more quiet behind your eyes than you had half an hour ago, then stay with me. The next one goes deeper than this one did. Your mind is worth the practice. And you, the one who's been listening this whole time, have been free a lot longer than you knew.